Well, hey there, guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we've got our first episode of Ask Kenny. So, quite some time ago on the show, in the comments section of one of the shows, I don't remember which one, a viewer suggested a segment for the show called Ask Kenny. Now, I don't remember which viewer it was. I get a lot of suggestions for this show. Most of them involve me not talking so much, but that's okay. Either way, I got the suggestion of the Ask Kenny, where you guys submit to me your questions and we'll answer them here on the show. And I'm actually a little surprised the participation was not as big or as energetic as I would have thought it would have been. And I did not receive very many questions, but I don't want to let it go much further without answering those that were presented to me. So, without further ado, let's get into some of the questions. Well, our first question comes from Dennis, and that question is I recently purchased a longer 40-watt laser along with the Lightburn software. Question number one: how long did it take and how much material did you trash before getting to the comfort level you have now with your lasers? And question number two: have you ever considered maybe an online in-depth class on lasers and or Lightburn? Well, let's start off with the first question as far as how long it took me. Um, I have a different kind of learning method when I'm learning something new, and I start small and I build that up. So, how much material did I trash? Next to none. Next to none, because I did not work outside of my means. I tried very simple engravings, and the first thing that I tried to perfect was my logo, handcrafted by so and so, or a cut above woodworkings in that logo. And that was a bit of playing around with scrap material and starting off with the smallest amount of adjustments or the smallest amount of modification. And then when I wanted to take it up the next notch, I would do the research and try to learn how to do the next level of software manipulation. So I would even Google on other YouTube creators. Like, there's nothing wrong with me learning from them as well. But for the most part, it was all playing around and learning through experience. And it's a lot more fun for me that way. So, my suggestion here is you're not going to be an expert with Lightburn right off the bat. My suggestion would be choose your most basic operation, straight up woodburn engraving, and do that. That has the least margin or the smallest margin of error. And then from there, if you want to try something different, maybe making certain sections double pass to make them deeper or darker, or you want to try something completely different, like on slate or mirrors, take it one step at a time. It is inevitable that you are going to waste some material, but don't let it bother you. Doing test grids is going to save you a lot of material, so make sure that you're doing that. As far as doing an online in-depth class on lasers or Lightburn, I have considered it, but to be quite honest, as good as I am with the lasers, I don't consider myself an expert, and I do see others that are much better than what I am. They have that ability to just jump right in there and do it with no issues whatsoever. Now, I have done a few Lightburn tutorials, one of them being doing the test grids to save yourself from wasting too much material. But as far as an in-depth laser show, you know what? You may see that on a future show as I gain even more confidence with the lasers. Nobody's an expert. And until I reach a level where I feel comfortable answering all of your questions off the top of my head because I already have that knowledge, until I reach that level of comfort, you probably won't see too many tutorials on Lightburn or on lasers here on the show. But I'm going to tell you, we're getting a lot closer to that level of comfort. So our next question comes from Roger, and Roger asks, I have always looked at your shop and it seems to be very compact, or maybe it's just what we see. How about a shop tour with an explanation as to why you did what you did? Guys, I've already produced two shop tours. And I do have a third one in my mind to do. The problem with doing a shop tour is unless something major changes, there's no sense in doing it because things are the same. It's the same layout. The two shop tours that I did, there was a large difference between shop tour number one and shop tour number two. Things like I eliminated all pegboard because I can't stand this stuff. That sort of thing. Having specific stations for things like drilling and milling and that sort of thing. There are plenty of reasons to set up a shop the way that you do. And sometimes I explain it and sometimes I don't. But there are two shop tours with possibly a third one in the works. I just got to clean up this mess around here. But Roger, I'm going to post the links to both of those shop tours down below. My shop is 12 feet by 24 feet, and it's pretty squished in here. It's not just what you see. It's a pretty small shop. So if you like, the links will be down below. Check out the shop tours, and you can look for a new one coming fairly soon. Well, the next question is from Paul, and Paul says, where do you display or store all your scale models? That has been a sensitive topic around this house for a long time. Because when I first started doing these scale models, they didn't take up a lot of room. There might have been like one on a shelf here or one on a shelf there, and that was about it. But there are a lot of these now, and some of them are extensive. Some of them are still ongoing, like the train. The train to this day, I can't remember exactly. It may have 6 cars on it with another 3 to 4 planned. And that would make this train 9 or 10 feet long. So where do you display something like this? For the most part, I'm going to say for the most part, they are all displayed in one room downstairs in my basement with individual floating shelves on the wall which house all of these models. And over time, as I make more, I'm running out of room. The wall is full and there's nowhere left to put anything on it. So I may have to morph and go to the other wall. Now, there is no real footage of that at the moment, but what I can do is I can direct you to my show. I think it was a 2-part series on the scale models and the ones that I've made so far. I'll post the links to those down below. They're all stored in that one room for the most part. And once I update their storage where they're not so jumbled and they're a little better organized and a little more presentable for the show, then I will update this with probably a new scale model feature on the Tuesdays, going through the display of each one and maybe a few of the facts of the features about it. So where are they stored? They're all in a room downstairs, Paul, and I think we need to buy a new house to start storing these things. Okay, this is a great question from Kevin. Kevin says, what type of wood turning tools do you use, traditional or carbide? And what do you think about using carbide tools for beginners or hobbyists? Kevin, I use both. I use both traditional and I use carbide. And carbide are fantastic for the beginner or the hobbyist wood turner. There's a reason for that. And the reason is with traditional tools, just depending on the chisel you're using, whether it be a gouge or a scraper, whether it be a skew, there is a specific method as to how to use that tool. There's certain approach angles that you need to use. There's certain ways that you bring the tool into your stock to get it to cut without a catch, without a snag, without a grab, without breaking your piece, or without injuring yourself. So there is a lot more. It's a lot more involved to use traditional turning tools. And I'll be quite frank, I'm no expert with traditional turning tools, but I do use them. Now, the carbide tools, like on the opposite end of the scale from traditional, they are pretty much a plug and play where they sit flat on your tool rest and you approach your stock with that tool in that same one flat position. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're hollowing. It doesn't matter if you're roughing. It doesn't matter if you're fine shaping or adding detail. It makes no difference. Those carbide tools are used one way. There is no different approach angles that you need to remember. There's no there's no different methods to use them. There's one method. You lay them flat on your tool rest, you approach the stock with them and take the depth of cut that you're comfortable with taking and that your tool can take, and away you go. The results are good because the carbide is sharp, which brings me to my next point. Traditional tools require sharpening, whereas carbide requires either a rotation of the actual blade itself or a replacement of the blade. You can sharpen carbide to a certain extent, but at some point in time, it just doesn't work any longer. But with traditional tools, there is constantly the need to grind or hone or shape or what have you. And there's so many different types of sharpening. There's a fingernail grind. There's just a straight angle grind. There is the flattening, or there is the adding of a hook to a flat grind. There are so many different sharpening techniques with traditional turning tools that it can be overwhelming for the beginner. So which do I use? Depends on my mood, depends on my project, but all in all, I use both types. And what do I think of them? The carbide for the beginner or the hobbyist? A1. If you're not into really getting into traditional turning, or you're not into learning all those techniques and the sharpening, but you still want to do some wood turning as a hobbyist or as a beginner, carbide tools will get you there quickly, and get you some great results. Well, the next question comes from Dutchie of Dutchie's Patterns, and I've done Dutchie's forklift here on the show. Guys, if you haven't checked out Dutchie's Patterns, I'll post a link to his site down below. His patterns are top notch. You got to check that out. But Dutchie asks basically that I use a lot of PVA glue or water-based wood glue, whereas he prefers CA. He says that he uses a clear lacquer finish on his models, which blends in and hides any squeeze out from the CA glue. And whereas the squeeze out from a water-based or wood glue would show with that kind of a finish. And he's not wrong. So he wants to know why I prefer PVA or wood glue over CA. And honestly, this is where the controversy is going to start here on the show. And it's my opinion. And if you have your opinion about it, that's great. We're not going to get into arguments about CA glue and that sort of thing. We're going to keep this civil. Everyone has their own preferences. But CA glue, in my mind and in my experience, is a temporary bond. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of you are thinking I'm nuts right about now. But remember those crazy glue commercials way back when, where they put like a drop of crazy glue on the guy's hard hat and he was swinging from a big I-beam from a building because the one drop of CA super glue or crazy glue stuck him to the beam? Yeah, okay. CA glue is temporary. If you take wood glue, water-based wood glue, and you create a joint between two pieces of wood, the water-based glue will swell the fibers of the wood, soak into it, and bond those two pieces together. And if you break those two pieces apart after the glue was fully cured, look at the actual joint. 9 times out of 10, the joint will hold, but the wood will break. The glue joint is stronger than the wood itself. If you do the same thing, in my experience, with CA glue, and you bond two pieces together, let it fully cure, and then break them apart, it's the glue that separates, not the wood. So the wood is stronger than the CA bond, and the bond of the CA breaks apart. And that's what makes me say it's a temporary bond. Go on to any YouTube channel where they love to use CA glue. And what do they use it an awful lot for? Temporary bonds, gluing a strip in place as a guide so they can snap it off when they're done. A little bit of activator on one piece, 3 or 4 drops of CA, put it in place where you want it, boom, you've got an instant fence. Break it off a few minutes later once you're done with the cut. I prefer wood glue because of its strength. It's just my preference. I don't use lacquer. So because I don't use lacquer, I don't like the way it applies. I don't like the way it smells. I don't like the properties of lacquer. So because of that, there would be no way for me to hide a CA joint with the lacquer. I prefer Danish oil and then a water-based varnish with a satin finish. And while Dutchie is 100% right that if you have squeeze out left over in a wood joint with wood glue or PVA glue, it will show. That's 100% correct. But once you apply that Danish oil, you can very easily see any of those spots, and it doesn't take much to get in there with a little sanding block and clean that up, reapply the Danish oil before the varnish ever hits the project, and you'll never have any squeeze out show because it will have been removed. CA glue for me is inherently difficult to remove with the squeeze out. I'm not a fan of it. I never have been. I never will be. I use it for mainly temporary bonds and as a finish in pen turning. I'll add a third to that I will use it when bonding the inner tubes of a turning into the wood stock. So adhering metal to wood, or for things like 3D printing, joining the plastics together works very well. Works well for gluing in magnets. So again, metal to wood. But as far as a wood to wood glue joint, not a fan of the CA. I'll stick to my wood glue. Well, these last 2 questions came through the comments section of other videos, and I didn't jot down who asked them. I apologize for that. But one viewer asks, what type of spray adhesive do you use? And I have only ever used one. I'm a big fan of it, and that would be Elmer's spray adhesive. Stores like Home Depot used to carry this stuff for dirt cheap, like $6 a can. And that is what initially attracted me to this brand of spray adhesive. And it has gone up astronomically. And now Home Depot does not even carry Elmer's anymore. I don't know why. So now I end up getting it off of Amazon. And you can watch for sales. It does go on sale from time to time, and you can buy half a dozen cans fairly inexpensively. There are other brands on the market that I have seen. I stick to what's always worked for me, and that is Elmer's. So I don't know, you can give it a try. I'll see if I can find a link to it, and I'll put it in the description down below. But there's the answer to that question. I like the cow. Well, the last question of today's show, again, came from the comments section of a different video, and it asked, do I have anybody behind the camera? No. A Cut Above Woodworkings, the channel, all of the videos, there's well over 800 of them. They have all been filmed by one person and one person only, and that person is me. I do have a show about behind the scenes of A Cut Above Woodworkings. I'll post a link to that down below. But I do everything. I do the filming via remote. So this little remote allows me to do whatever I want. I can zoom in, zoom out. I can take photos. I can scan. You can do whatever you want with it. But it's a great little remote that I use. Usually lives in my left pocket, so I can not lose it and easily find it. I have a couple GoPro cameras that also mount on different mounts around the shop. They're on certain tools, etc. I have a gooseneck mount that clamps onto a tool to be very mobile. I have cameras, like small little point and shoots that I use. I use whatever means are at my disposal to film the show. And then from there, I upload the footage onto my computer and use Final Cut Pro X to edit the shows. And I do all that myself. I upload myself. I answer every single comment that is left on my program myself. That's all me. I don't have anyone behind the scenes. I don't have anyone to work the camera. I don't have anyone to edit my videos or post on my Instagram or post on the channel's Facebook. It is all me. And my wife will once in a while monitor and say, oh, you missed answering so-and-so's comment. And I will go in and check, oh, how did I do that? And I'll go in and answer the comment. So she does keep an eye in the background. But as far as the filming, editing, posting, answering, all of that stuff, it's all this guy. I'll post a link to the behind the scenes show down below, and hopefully that'll give you a better insight as to what it takes to produce this channel. And there you have it. The first episode of Ask Kenny. Guys, I would have liked to see a lot higher levels of participation in this show, but I guess it's like everything else. People think, oh, someone else is going to ask that question or someone else is going to cover that. But if everybody has that same thought process, then no questions ever get asked. So for those who did send in questions, whether it be through comments of the program or through email, etc., or through the contact page of my website, I want to thank you very much for participating in this experiment. And if you guys have liked this segment and you want more of this, by all means, shoot me the emails, shoot me the messages so that I can answer your questions and add a second segment. If you don't think that this is a worthy segment to have here on the show, that's not a problem either. Let me know down below. I'll judge by how the responses are. And if it's not working, then we'll just get rid of it. Because after all, without you, there is no show. Without you, it's just this crazy guy standing in his shop by himself, talking to himself. So it's just as much your show as what it is mine. I just do all the work. You're welcome. If you haven't already, or if you've found any part of this show interesting, please like and subscribe to the channel. We've got an amazing audience base, and I'm hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope that you're going to send me your questions for the next episode of Ask Kenny. But more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays. Okay, it's a break for lunch, guys. Guys? Oh, yeah, it's just me. But I really do want lunch. I'm starving.